Welcome to Comic Sans, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yan, and I'm typically the comics half of this podcast, but today we've got a special guest. And I know I've introduced Nat as a special guest before, but no, this time we actually do have a special guest.
But I am still special.
Yes, Nat, more than you'll ever know.
Thank you. Do you want to introduce the guest?
Yes, I would like to welcome the spectacular, the inimitable, the wonderful Beth Hetland.
Dun, 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 dun. I should have asked you what intro music you wanted. That's just something I came up with on the spot.
As perfect. Honestly, you've read my mind. You nailed it in one.
Beth Hetland is a critically acclaimed cartoonist and award-winning educator. She teaches comics and comics-adjacent courses at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, where I went. She self-publishes comics that are both solo works and with her longtime collaborator, Kyle O'Connell. Her most recent book, Tender, was published by Fantagraphics. But a few months ago, in March 2024, I'm getting louder and louder. I'm really getting into this wrestling thing. Beth Hetland!
Wait, finish your sentence.
No, I did. I finished
A few months ago, what?
But a few months ago, I was using old-timey slang. I was using a different...
I thought it was a new sentence where you said, but a few months ago, she...
No. I just was using a different form of grammar.
Wow.
Welcome to the show, Beth. We're so excited to have you.
This is quite the intro. Thank you so much. And I guess then I have to jump in with I'm the comic side of this because I am a cartoonist, which is a new category for you two on this show.
Yes. I mean, you are the first ever guest on Comic Sans. How does that make you feel, Beth?
Incredibly honored and very nervous.
You shouldn't be. You know, it's just two bozos over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And now we're three bozos, which is
You know what I
better.
loved is that I didn't have to prepare anything for this episode. It was so great. The only thing I had to stop myself from doing was I had the comic that Beth wants us to read by my bedside, and every night I'd be like, oh, should I? Oh, wait, no. I'm not supposed to read that. The whole point is that I don't read it.
I was wondering if you were able to resist the siren song of the book we were going to read. I know, Nat, I'm sure you have yet to open the package of when it arrived. Yeah.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Look at
Still
this.
laminated. Still laminated.
But it was for a reason. It was a deliberate choice that I will share later. So a little bit of foreshadowing for you.
Before we get into it, I like to start with just asking what people are enjoying lately. Nat, could you tell me a piece of media you're watching, reading, listening, eating?
Well, recently, sort of at your suggestion, it was more like I asked you, should I watch this? And you were like, yeah. I watched Poor Things. Very late to the game, I know. Emma Stone, Janine, my wife, and I, we had a little movie night. And so we watched Poor Things. And it was weird. It was bizarre. But I liked it. It was really fun.
Nat, could you tag yourself as one of the characters in Poor Things?
Whoa.
Yeah, there's
Dangerous
really like
game.
only two answers.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I don't think there's any other than Emma Stone's character.
Even still.
I'll be that philosopher guy on the boat. He just seems like a safe answer.
The one that's needlessly cruel is the safe answer for you.
You know, I'm just going to shut up now.
Beth, what's something you've been enjoying lately?
Enjoying is a great word that is maybe not going to be applicable, but I am enjoying it. Other people are not. Is the show The Terror? It's on Shudder, and it's a show that is anthology style. And so the first season is about these two ships that are trying to find the Arctic Pass in 18 blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
And
My
so
favorite year.
naturally they get stuck. And the ships go missing, and it's the Arctic, and the crew goes missing, and one can only assume what happens when there are humans and no food in the Arctic.
I'm no longer happy.
Dun dun dun. You should be.
For a second, when you were describing it, I thought you were talking about like two sentient ships, like Cars movie style, you know? Because you like these two ships are trying to find, and that
these two manned ships.
No.
Nat.
No.
But what's fascinating is, okay, so it's fiction-ish, but it's based on a true story, and the ships actually did disappear, and they resurfaced in like 2013, like, which is crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. I know, it's worth watching. It's really disgusting. But then the second season, which is what I'm actually watching right now, because I watched the first season already, but the second season is The Terror Infamy, and it's about the Japanese internment camps in the US. And so it's like so ripe for horrific things.
Oh wait, so it's
and like
completely
something that is
different story.
That is what anthology means.
Yeah, completely different story.
Oh, now I get it.
Oh, see, I thought y'all define anthology.
No, we have.
See,
we
Beth,
have.
but that's
let
a
me
new one.
introduce
Okay.
you. The sansness of my being extends beyond the realms of the comic world.
Something I recently enjoyed was the graphic novel Skip by Molly Mendoza. It's fantastic. The
Yes.
art in it is just unbelievable.
I love Molly Mendoza's
It's just kind of like, it's like a big format book too. I'm not sure if that's the right description, but like oversized. So the pages are really large and it's just really like ornately painted and the colors are just so beautiful. And sometimes I'll turn a page and I'll be like, I have no idea what's going on and I love it so much.
She has a book called Stray that Bulgilhan Press put out. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't. I should go look that up. I really like this. So I want to go see their other work.
Hard recommend.
Terrific. And speaking of recommendations from Beth Hetland.
Nice.
Wonderful segue
Good
from
segue.
Yan. Wonderful segue. And he comes in with the segue from the top rope.
Wow.
I'm keeping the wrestling
Wow.
thing going.
Clearly.
Today, we're doing something a little different where instead of me recommending something and reading it with Nat, Beth has brought something in that neither Nat and I have read. We're going to get a little, we didn't settle on a phrase, a Beth rant. Beth
it's
talk.
terrible.
Beth talk with
I
Beth
don't know.
Hetland.
It's really bad, guys.
Yeah, it's grim out here.
Beth has some great like portmanteaus you can utilize, but not really one with rant or yell or
What about Beth Het rant?
het rant.
Yeah.
Wow. Think Rant-land would be better.
Yeah, that's true. We
Yeah,
got notes.
I like Beth Hetland.
Let's go with Beth Rantland. Beth, I'm going to hand the reins over to you. Please tell us about what we're reading today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very excited and shocked genuinely that I found a title that Yen hasn't read.
I am also shocked.
I was really excited, and I have to admit, my first pick was Asterios Polyp, which you all read, and I love that book. But I'm really excited to be bringing to the table Black Hole by Charles Burns. Da da da. So this is a book that I think is really, not only is it really important to kind of comics history, but also Charles Burns is like a really prominent figure in cartooning and especially in contemporary comics. He joined comics and comic making at the height of like underground comics with an X. So like Charles is somebody who is influenced by folks like R. Crumb and Trina Robbins and Art Spiegelman's Raw magazine and all of these amazing, Nat, I knew I was like already too far. Go ahead.
What does underground comics with an X mean?
Yes. Okay. I was going to ask if we need a little history lesson.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the US, comics got big, right? Superman showed up and everyone was like, oh my God, amazing. And then comics became spooky and there was this company called EC Comics, which is Entertainment Comics. And they did things like Tales from the Crypt. Yen was doing a really great impression that I think he should revive for this episode of The Crypt Keeper.
Oh, but I've already got the wrestling voice.
Yeah, we don't mix metaphors in this show.
It was clearly Nat's favorite bit that happened, obviously.
I'll do it. Spooky.
Perfect. Thank you. And so they got really intense. And then there was this guy who thought, hey, comics are corrupting the youth. They're going to turn people deviant. They're going to cause violence and murder and queerness and all of these other things that are clearly a detriment to American society, blah, blah, blah.
Whoa.
So true.
Yeah.
So
So
true.
they
He
did
was
this.
so right.
Wow. Yeah, you would know. A Captain Corrupt over there.
That's my new name, everyone. Captain Corrupt.
Comics like went to trial. Some publishers created this thing called the Comics Code Authority. And this was like a little tiny symbol that would go on comics to say, this is wholesome. This is not going to have anything questionable. And some of the things that were questionable were things like, oh, I don't know, women existing out of marriage and dating. Like anything that would be like a detriment to like American ideals in the 1950s. So it was like this really bonkers code that just tanked the US comics market. It put a bunch of things out. So all these companies had to get these like squeaky clean comics. This is where we get things like teen comics start to show up. So like Archie. Yes, fantastic. Good mind meld. And these things that are just kind of like really saccharine and boring and not interesting.
Sorry, Archie fans, but Beth's
No,
right.
I love Archie. Archie's great. And
I
think Archie's important, but I think that also it should not be one or the other. It should be all of it. Right, honestly.
Right.
So what happened was that Comics Code Authority, Tank Comics, people were like, what the heck? I want to read some nasty stuff again, or things that are just a little bit more grown up.
Edgy,
exactly. And also at the same time, the Xerox machine was invented.
Oh.
And so cartoonists and creators were able to make and self-publish their own work. So they did not have to be beholden to the Comics Code Authority.
I think we briefly talked about the Comics Code Authority in our convention.
Yes, the Mickey Mouse Liberation Front. Is that something?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
something that's
Mhm.
related?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So
Good job, Nat.
yeah, good memory.
Mickey Mouse Liberation. Good job.
So Comics with an X is kind of like the signifier to say these are underground comics that you would find at like head shops in the United States that were just like predominantly self-published or small press made. A lot of times they're like more mature. A lot of times they had drugs involved in them. They had like sexual liberation. They had like women, they had queerness. They had like women existing, not married, right? Like there was like all of
The
these
horror.
Exactly. So it had all of these wacky, wild things. And Charles Burns was somebody who was growing up at that time to be able to access those types of works. And so those really informed his own cartooning and storytelling and interests in general.
I love on this show when we talk about like the advent of like physical technology that furthers an art form. Like, so this thing about the Xerox printer, it's just like so cool to me because like our whole discussion on webtoons is about that exact same thing about like how tech evolves and then the art evolves with it, and accessibility changes and all of that changes, and I that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean the first publication that R. Crumb put out, his wife at the time had a baby pram because she was pregnant and was distributing his comics in the baby pram, like on the streets of New York. Like this fresh new baby is born of comics. And like I love that image of her like
Performance
walking.
art.
Exactly. It's very much that. And I think underground comics really embraces that kind of like out of the box thinking. So to go back to kind of where we're at here is that Comics with an X, so R. Crumb, we're thinking about some of these creators, and then Art Spiegelman. Nat, do we know who Art Spiegelman is?
The name has come up, Nat, but very briefly.
It does sound familiar, yeah, but I
Do
don't.
you remember Mouse?
not-
We've talked about Mouse.
We've talked about it, but we didn't read it, right?
Yeah, we didn't.
We've joked about how we're not gonna read it on this show.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. We're a little scared of.
Why would we read something that's a Pulitzer Prize winning graphic novel? Yeah, great question.
No, it's so good. It's one of those where it's like it's so good. I'm like, what am I gonna say? It's another one of those that like there's so much literary academic work surrounding it. So the question.
It's true.
Yeah.
So Art is the creator of that, Art Spiegelman. Before he did Mouse, or sort of in tandem with Mouse, he started this magazine called Raw Magazine. And Raw Magazine was intended to elevate comics to like a literary form. And so he curated and like invited people to Raw Magazine versus like Mad Magazine, which was like kind of slapstick and ridiculous. And he was like, no, there's definitely art in here. Like we want comics to be elevated, not just poop jokes, right? Which there are certainly poop jokes in Raw, but
and we do
classy.
love our poop jokes here on
classy.
Comic Sans.
Oh yeah, it's necessary. Nothing is funnier than poop and farts. So,
See, I'm already
and
laughing.
that's from a professional. That's from a
already laughing.
professional. So Raw Magazine is one of Charles Burns' first publications that he was featured in. He saw Raw Magazine on the newsstands. He like literally went to Art Spiegelman's apartment and like found the address and like pounded on the door and was like, I want to do this thing. And Art Spiegelman came down and he's all like disheveled and bonkers looking. And he's like mail me something. I don't know. And I also think it's important to say that Raw Magazine was not just Art Spiegelman's. It was also Francoise Moulet, which is his wife. And she is currently still the person who picks the covers for The New Yorker. So she is an incredibly prominent comic. And she also spoke at my comics graduation. So she's very cool.
Wow.
Next guest on the show.
yeah, sure, Nat. Yeah.
And here she is. So that's just kind of like a little bit of like underground comics and a little bit of history with Charles Burns. Yan, I know you know a lot of this stuff already. Have you seen Raw Magazine? Do you know these?
I've definitely seen it. I don't think I've actually like sat down and read one though.
Yeah, they're really hard to get your hands on, actually. They're under lock and key usually.
Are any of them like collated and republished? Like, have they ever done that?
Actually, I don't know if there's like a collected version that somebody's put out. And part of what's tough about that is they were playing with the print format. And so inside of a lot of Raw magazines, there are like smaller, tiny mini books that are stapled into the larger books. There's like cutouts. For example, Charles Burns' contribution was he did these hand-cut like covers for every single issue of the one that he was in, so that there's like a sneak peek die-cut preview of what the page is after the cover page.
Whoa.
So that's sort of hard to reproduce in
Yeah.
like a mass production format.
So it's like a zine.
Right. This is actually where we get this idea of zines, is from
Yeah.
Underground Comics with an X, is this self-pub movement.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Very
Super cool.
I know. It's a lot of info I'm trying to cram into Nat's brain here. This is off the path that I was going on. But okay, so Charles Burns, we're going to talk about Black Hole. So it was originally published as 12 individual issues, again, going back to the roots of DIY culture. And then it was picked up by this company called Kitchen Sink Press. Have we heard of this? Have we talked about this?
No, we've not.
And Yan, what do you know about Kitchen Sink
I
Press?
think I don't know anything. I think this is the first time I'm hearing that name.
Wow, it truly is a seance.
Yeah, wow. I'm loving this experience.
I'm
Yes.
loving it. Probably more than you.
So Kitchen Sink Press was founded by Dennis Kitchen from what? Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Shout out Wisconsin.
Shout out Wisconsin, which is where I'm from. And they were one of the first small press indie publishers. And so they published a huge amount of titles. And in fact, they worked with this is a name you'll know, the Will Eisner Group.
Yes.
And they were able to reissue The Spirit as like through Kitchen Sink Press.
Oh.
So that's a pretty big notable one. Kitchen Sink Press put out the first 4 issues of Black Hole, but they had this really ill-fated merger with this company called Tundra. And Tundra is known for putting out Scott McCloud's Understanding comics, which was another seminal, very important work. And Nat, maybe you should read that one.
I've been thinking about that. We've really been like,
It's not
lobbing
up
that
to me,
around.
Beth.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Why would I think you would take your own education into your own hands?
Get him. This is why Nat was scared.
It's for the longevity of this podcast, Beth. I have to
No,
remain
that's true.
willfully ignorant for me to do my job.
That's why
If
he
I take my
resets.
education into my own hands, then I'd work myself out of a job.
I mean, honestly, I totally understand that. But
Thank you.
But
it would help potentially for you to consider Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. But
I'll try.
so Scott McCloud's book is not what put Tundra under. It was just like a bad idea, bad merger, bad time in the 80s. And so Kitchen Sink and Tundra collapsed. But Fantagraphics actually picked up Black Hole and re-put out the first 4 issues and then put out all the rest of the 12 issues total. And then that was from 1995 until, are we ready for this? 2005.
whoa.
Charles Burns worked on this series and this book, which it's not ongoing, it's completed, right, for 10 years.
That's
I mean, that's
nuts.
kind of Asterios Polyp was also over 10 years, wasn't it, Yen?
Yeah, but you look at the length of this thing. Beth, you're saying he was like 1/3 done by then.
Yeah. So when he was doing those first 4 and then it went under, he was like, oh no.
That's wow.
But thankfully, because he was part of Underground Comics and he knew all these people, Fantagraphics also sort of was founded in like 1969, 1970, something like that. And so they had seen this starting to become more and more prominent. So they were able to pick it up. But then you'll note that the publisher for the collected version is actually not Fantagraphics,
Pantheon.
Pantheon.
Oh.
So when this series came out and the final floppy comic was put out, he was like, okay, well, this is starting to get a lot of buzz and people don't want series. They want like a book with a spine in it, right? This is 2005. We want a book with a spine.
Yeah, that classic era.
Yeah, classic era of early aughts. And so he approached Pantheon because he thought they would have a bigger reach of publication and being able to have, again, kind of this idea of like legitimacy or critical reviews, analysis, publication for this entire book. So that's why it became the book that it is now.
Beth, when it was originally published, what was the page specs? Was it this size? Was the floppies this size?
No, they were larger. So this is actually, the collected version is smaller than what the actual zine shape or the like individuals were. They were slightly bigger. And specifically, I think they were just a little bit, I mean, it's the same ratio, but if you look at your interior pages, that bottom margin is actually slightly bigger than the other margins. So you can see that the ratio is just slightly off.
Oh.
Ooh, sorry, Pantheon. I love you, but also. So it should be a little bit taller and a little bit wider.
I see.
Fantagraphics actually more recently put out an oversized edition of original pages and art. And so you can see these huge, lush, beautiful cartoon pages as like the originals.
And shout out to Fantagraphics for also, I said I would drop a plug for this as many times as I can, for Beth Hetland's Tender, which is, if you're watching the video of this, you can see it behind her head.
It's me.
Yeah.
That's
A
it.
terrific graphic novel that Nat hasn't received yet. It's on his way.
I've ordered it. It's on its way.
Yes.
Oh, wow. What a journey.
And we will have a
It's
link
long.
in our description for where you can get Tender, whatever makes the most sense for you geographically. Because if you're in the US, Fantagraphics Direct would be the best. For the rest of the world, we'll have other options.
Yeah. And it really still a little bit boggles my mind that I'm published with the same publisher that
You are cousins.
Charles. We're family.
That's so
But
cool.
okay, so we talked about the history of this book a little bit and comics with an X, but are you guys curious at all about what this book is about?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
So I have to say, both of you, I'm sorry and not sorry. This is a horror comic.
Woo!
Yes. For the listener, I historically do not do well with horror, but I did really enjoy the horror comic that we read in season 2. The name of which I don't remember.
Gideon Falls.
Gideon
Wow.
Falls, thank you.
Gravity Falls,
Yeah,
I believe is what.
Exactly. I was like, he's going to say Gravity Falls again.
And I think also, what's going to be interesting is that because you've read horror, you've also read romance.
Mhm.
And this is a horror romance.
Ooh.
In that order?
Ooh. No, I actually would reverse it. It's a romance with teeny bits of horror in it.
Interesting.
Ooh.
And so the thing that I want to boil down to is that I want you to think about the horror of being a teenager, which is what I
Easy.
think this book ultimately is.
We've had like 3 episodes about that.
Yeah.
I know. And that's why I feel like this is like such a good fit. But one of the things that's really notable about Charles Burns' work in particular is his drawing style. And his drawing style and his cartooning style are these super heavy black spot areas, this like really thick, you can see it on the cover, this like really beautiful feathered brush line work. And just the way that he's making marks. It's still cartoony, but it has this element of these like intense atmospheric lighting, this intense kind of like darkness, as well as just a precision that is very, very different than I think some of the other work that you've looked at and read is. And I know, again, there's a couple of strikes against me in this book. So number 1, it's horror, but it's silent. So, okay, great.
Yeah.
Number 2, it is black and white, no color at all, which I also know is one of your not faves.
Nat
Yes.
likes color.
Re Scott Pilgrim episode.
Nat likes bright lights, big sounds.
Beth has really done her homework on my preferences.
Look, I know. But I think that one of the things that's going to be really striking is that unlike some of the other black and white comics you've read, which are really looking at kind of like a more scratchy or a more immediate kind of urgency of mark making, the fact that if I hadn't told you this took 10 years, I think you would still feel the methodical plotting of the heavy weight of how he is drawing this work. The level of detail of each texture, of each item is just unbelievably striking. And that's just the visual aspect of it. In that, he's also, and I wanted to introduce this term maybe after you've read it, but I want you to think about, and as you're looking at this, how the imagery is connecting to each other. Because he's working very symbolically, and he's thinking about how, like, when we imagine something or dream something or are tripping on a drug, perhaps we may see things and then we're creating connections ourselves. And he's trying to emulate some of those experiences through his cartooning.
I'm so excited. I'm so thrilled to read this. I think Nat's sweating a little bit.
I still haven't told you the plot of this a little bit.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what is it about? I want to know.
So it's about a group of teenagers. It's 1970 in Seattle, so Pacific Northwest. Maybe not Seattle proper, but like Seattle-ish. They are experiencing something called the bug. And this is a sexually transmitted disease that mutates people in different ways, like physically mutates them.
Oh boy.
So if you have the bug, most of the time, people know.
Oh.
And they are
Ooh.
ostracized for that. And we follow a couple of different characters. In this particular excerpt, we're going to read essentially the first 3 issues, which I have very specific outlines of where we're going to read and start and stop.
Okay.
So from the beginning, and unfortunately, again, this is one that doesn't have page numbers, so I'm very sorry. But it has chapter breaks that have titles, so we'll be able to utilize that. So the characters you're going to meet are kind of the two of the 3 main characters. So you're going to meet Keith, and you're going to meet Chris. And Keith and Chris are just high schoolers. Keith's kind of a stoner. Chris is kind of like, she's not like a popular girl, but she's just like kind of a nice girl. And you see them and you meet them and you are going to learn a little bit about what's going on in this town. And some of the things that we're not going to be able to get to in the excerpt we're reading is that the bug is not the main focus of the story. The bug is an element of the story. And then there are murders that start. And so this group of
Ooh.
teens are
Matt's sweating even more. I can see a big comical like manga drop on his face.
Is that the bug is like symptomatic of some of these societal elements. It's really having to deal with all of these pressures as teenagers of like, you're changing, the world is changing, and you're dealing with all of these new experiences, emotions, people you're meeting. It's very drugs, sex, and rock and roll is what this book is a little bit.
I'm so pumped.
Nat, does that give you any sense of what this is about?
Yeah, somehow I feel a lot of like synergy with like Poor Things that I've just watched. You know, there's a little bit of black and white, a little bit of sex, drugs, and rock and roll in some
I think
ways.
you'll find and some like grotesquerie, right?
Yeah,
like there's
yeah.
I think there's actually a lot of synergy with this. So you're going to start from the beginning, and there are these little chapter breaks that happen where you'll see a black page that has like a white illustration on it. And then, so if you open up right away, you'll see
Okay, hang on. Let me
kind
open
of-
up this
oh, yeah.
plastic.
Oh,
you
I
know,
see. Okay.
And the reason, again, let me now officially say the reason why I wanted to lead this on is because mine came with this sticker on the plastic which says unsuitable for the young, you know. So as definitively the youngest person in this room,
How
this
dare
digital
you.
room.
How dare
What
you?
a weird thing to bring up.
How dare you?
Yeah.
I just want to say, is this suitable for me? I don't know. I'm scared.
It's not suitable for you.
Yeah, that's
and
what
you'll
it
be
means.
fine.
Unsuitable for the young means it's unsuitable for the youngest person in the room. It's all relative.
As long as you bring in a baby into the room,
Yeah,
you're
then
good.
you're fine.
Then you're good. Yeah, how old are your dogs? So you're fine.
True.
Oh, true.
In dog years.
Thank goodness.
Mine came with no such warning ever.
Well, that's
Welcome to
a
Singapore.
facet of
Yeah.
of the Singapore book selling industry is that if it's
So-
unsuitable for the young, it has to be wrapped up, so kids can't go in and open it and preview and flip through, and then have their lives irrevocably changed.
By the corrupt comics.
That's right. Comics Code Authority. It's even in Singapore.
Okay, I got it open. Sorry, Beth. What were
Okay.
you saying? What are we looking for now?
In this first, like when you open this first kind of spread, you're going to see this like black vertical cut mark or white cut mark on a black page. And then you'll see like a frog on a dissection table and it says Biology 101. This is sort of the same format that each of these little chapter breaks happen. And so what I ended up doing was I wanted to emulate as if we were reading the first 3 issues that Charles was putting out through Kitchen Sink Press. So these chapter breaks are not necessarily indicative of each volume. So that means that you are going to go all the way to this font that actually says Bag Action. And it looks like this. So this is the one you're going to stop at.
Is that before or after the one that says clit?
That's cut, actually.
Oh, Nat, come on. Get it together, man.
See?
We've barely
Hey,
started.
in my defense, come on. In my defense, look at it.
That's clearly a you. That's clearly a you.
I
don't know where
man.
your brain is,
This
but
font. You told me
back to
sex,
Poor Things.
drugs, and rock and roll.
look, all I have to say is there's going to be a lot of dinglings you see in this, okay? And honestly, again, I told you this before, and I know that this is tough, that like memory-wise, you can only read an excerpt, but I really think that if I could, I would make you read this whole gosh darn thing, okay?
You know,
It
I
is
just
a
want to say
literary form, sir.
we read
It is
excerpts not because
Sir.
of my memory.
Disagree.
I want to make that clear. It is
Disagree.
because it is because we have limited time and we really read the comics in between the recordings. So, you know, we don't want to spend a whole day reading.
Wait, don't tell the listener that.
Are
They
you
don't know that.
First of all, yes, you do want to spend a whole day reading. You should spend a whole day reading.
Get
and also,
'em.
it's a comic book. It doesn't take a whole day.
Wait, Beth, you should wait to how long it takes him to read this excerpt, and then you'll understand.
Are our appetites whetted? Are we hungry?
Yes.
Are we feeling excited for some sex, drugs, and rock and roll?
Very much so.
And the horrors of teenage years?
Yes.
I'm very excited.
Welcome back to Comic Sans.
Ooh, spooky.
Oh man. Oh man.
I am so hype. Okay, holy cow. Okay, so as tradition, I'm curious about your 5 words. And so I think actually it would be the most fun if you alternated. And so you get a 5 cumulative words.
Oh man. Wait, then who gets 3? Who gets 2? Nat, you get 3. I'll get 2.
Can you imagine we did this as mind meld and we had to like
We
land on
keep
the
landing
same
on the
5
same
words?
word.
That would be really good too. But
For the
okay.
listeners' context, mind meld is a game we play in warm up where we, I won't explain
Some
it, but
inside
yes.
baseball for you listeners.
Yeah, there you go.
Nat, why don't you go first? Yeah.
Okay, I'll go first. And I'm not gonna go chronologically. The last thing I read is just lingering in my mind, so I'm gonna go ominous.
Oh yes, that is so true. I'm going to say a little bit of an odd word. I'm not even sure if I'm using it right. Warbling.
Warbling.
You can't just
Ooh,
make
okay.
up words, Yan.
Wait.
That's a real word.
What does that mean?
Okay, the definition is a bird sings softly with a succession of constantly changing notes, or this is what I'm thinking more, singing in a trilling or quavering voice.
Yeah, kind of like
Oh.
a
Wobbly.
warble would be like a wibbly wobbly timey wimey
Yes.
kind of thing.
Okay.
Nat, word 3.
I'm gonna say this is 2 words, but as you know in this show, that's quite a common thing for me.
Yeah.
Teenage recklessness.
Oh yeah.
I just wish the 2
I
words
guess
you
that
picked
could just
were
that
like...
could just be
Yeah, I wish
recklessness.
the 2 words you picked were like an actual term sometimes and not just like 2 different things.
I feel like that's really fitting. I feel like recklessness is good.
Yeah.
Recklessness is good. And we did address teenager, so I feel like that's kind of one that we went going in with. But
Yeah,
but we'll accept it. We'll allow it.
thank you.
My word is psychosexual.
Ooh.
Whoa.
You're good at
All
this,
right.
Yen.
All right, Nat, last word.
It's gonna be something really anticlimactic. I'm just like sex or something.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't open with like, what did Beth call them earlier? Dinglings?
Dinglings. Yeah. There's a lot of
Ding-dongs.
lot of dinglings in here. Yeah, for sure.
I just want to say I'm just so glad that it's not in color because if the blood was red, I can't do like deep red blood. So
Yeah.
that's my super long word. Black and white. Thank God, black and white for this particular comic.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
Yeah, I love that as like one of your takeaways is that like if this were in color, it would be like it's already a lot.
Mm.
And so it being in color would be so overwhelming and so intense and just so visceral. Like it would be way too much.
I don't want to get into it yet. But I wonder...
Well, we got to do a recap
Yeah,
first.
okay, I won't
but-
get into it then.
Okay. Then don't.
No, I won't.
Yeah, don't.
Done.
How about don't? How about
Look
don't?
at Beth knowing the format of our show better than
Yeah,
the host.
truly.
Here's the deal. Here's the deal. I'm in charge. now.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm so used to having the reins and having to keep it in line. And now I'm like, I can say whatever.
Step off. All right. So I want to recap. What did you read? What happened? What's going on?
Nat, why don't you take Keith and I'll take Chris?
Sure. So we start. Okay, so we're gonna go chronologically. We start with Keith
Broad strokes.
in a biology class. Yeah, broad strokes. Start dissecting a frog, and basically from this first little chapter, you get the sense that he's interested in Chris. And then there's this weird sort of thing that happens where he looks at the frog and the slit that he made in the frog's guts. He goes into this like weird trip sort of hallucination thing. It's lots like this black holes. There's mentions of black holes literally, but also this imagery of like circling, spiraling frogs and slits and flesh and things. And then he faints. People laugh at him.
Chris was assigned his biology partner. For
Yes,
this,
yes,
For the
yes.
dissecting, so which I think is important. But
They did not know each other.
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
For the listener, the book kind of alternates between, the narrative perspective of Keith and Chris, right? Is it always? Is it strictly like 1 2 1 2 1 2? I don't know.
No, I think already
not,
I think
not
the
strictly.
first 2 are
Yeah.
both Keith.
Okay,
Keith.
okay.
Yeah.
In the second thing, we learn about this place in the woods. I had the prior context of knowing that the bug gives you these physical deformities. But I guess if you came in cold, you would just encounter these creatures who live in the woods, who live in these tents and little shacks, who all have these physical deformities. And that's sort of what the reader is introduced to. And notably, Keith encounters a shed human skin.
You can tell that it's like a full, almost like exoskeleton of like
Yeah.
it's still, you can tell it's a human body. It's not like shreds, and it's like hanging in the trees of like almost this drapery.
Yeah. And I promised you in a reenactment, Beth, at 2 points in this chapter, I made this face. I'm sorry for audio listeners, you're not going to see this, but I made this face. One was one was when we first see the guy, the deformed guy, Rick. I mean, the page turn, there's a snap, and then you turn, and then you see his face. I made that face, and then it zooms in on his mouth, and then there was like let me read this. His lips started moving, and wet, sloppy sounds came out. Gross. And then the other time I made it was when Keith encounters the skin.
Yeah.
The face Nat is making is every point of his face is being pushed to its extremes. The eyebrows are as high as possible. The mouth is low. The nose is stretching outward somehow like Pinocchio.
And if I was making a sound, it would be...
Much
See,
like the little
that's how-
mouth.
I was like, that's what I hear when I hear the little mouth speak.
So pretty early on you made that face.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
yeah,
after
yeah.
that you were desensitized.
Yeah. After that, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, what's a kegger? That's my question.
It's like a keg party.
Oh,
It's like where the big
cute.
thing. Yeah, this is American culture, right? Where they get
Okay.
a keg
Yeah,
of beer,
do-
and that's just what everyone drinks.
I see.
Do you know what a keg
Yeah,
is?
I know what a keg is. I just never heard
Okay.
of kegger.
You know what beer is?
Yeah, a keg.
Uh,
Yeah, a kegger is frequently kind of like a rowdy, super drink heavy party where you're drinking quantity, not quality, of this fairly warm, usually shitty beer.
I've gone to one kegger, and like my beer was all foam because it pumps up, and it's just like all foam.
They maybe didn't know how to tap it properly.
okay, zooming along. I think the next time we encounter Keith is at this kegger, this party, and then like he finds out that Chris went swimming in her underwear, and everyone saw that she had the bug. Spoiler alert. Yan will explain why that is so later, because she has something on her back, and then Keith kind of goes into the woods, sees her changing, and then helps her because she cuts her foot. And most importantly, ends with a very, very ominous thought. I guess I'll just read it now, later?
Yeah.
What should I do?
Yeah, read
Okay.
it. Yeah.
So, he helps her with this her cut foot. He has her blood on his hands, and he says, blood, her blood, dark and real. I've been marked with her blood. It was a sign. I didn't know where or when or how, but she was going to be mine. It was going to happen. It had to happen.
Oh, man.
Man. Creeper alert.
I don't like
What
keeping
a-
his monobrow.
Yeah, no shit. I mean, honestly, I don't think anybody's likable in this book.
I didn't mind Chris so far.
Tell us about Chris.
Yeah, so
Tell
Chris
us
is the
about Chris.
biology partner, and she's the only person who doesn't laugh at Keith when he faints, because she perhaps maybe has a similar vision, or she sees something akin to what he sees. We don't know as of yet.
She's just nice, maybe.
And we open, the first time we get like a Chris-centric chapter is it's this insane dream sequence. Insane dream sequence where she kind of goes back to like the origins of man.
Yeah.
To the tribes, and then she encounters, which is really, connects to what Nat was reading about Omnis. She encounters Keith as this sort of snake creature, this serpent, with his human face on a snake's body, and he says he's gonna help her, but instead of helping her, he wraps her up tight and then constricts her and presumably kills her, and she wakes up.
Are you just going to skip the corkscrew penis?
No, I knew you'd bring it up, so I didn't really, I thought I knew that'd be something you'd hyperfixate on, and
No, I mean, if you just look, can I just for a moment, look at that panel, and then go like 2 pages down and look at the serpent. I mean, that's imagery.
The
like
spiral,
the serpent
right?
Is the spiral of the serpent is the exact same as the corkscrew. I don't know what that
Oh, yeah.
means, but something Beth was saying about how imageries connect, that's something, right?
yeah.
Absolutely. And then also the spiral of the rolled up piece of paper that she pulls out of the foot slit is also intentionally like there's Yes, absolutely. Good close read on that.
Thank
and
you.
and even earlier too, when you see the vision that Keith has when he faints,
Mhm.
you see little snippets of so much of what happens throughout the rest of the book. But yeah, so she has this dream sequence. She wakes up
And she tears off her skin and she throws it into the woods. And as it goes into the woods, it takes on a little bit of that spiral shape like everything else. And it
Mhm.
appears in the exact same position in which Keith finds the skin.
yeah.
So Keith we find out that Keith has found Chris's skin. And then
Mhm.
we continue on and we get this long flashback sequence from Chris where she's very enamored by Rob Facine Sani.
That's good. That's good.
Fancy
Yeah, I
Sani?
don't know how to pronounce his last
I'm
name.
assuming there's
Part of me
soft
was like,
C's.
I think it's like
It feels
yeah.
Italian.
Or do you think it's
Fancy
Facci
Yes.
Chani?
Fancy
Oh,
Yeah.
no, Nat. But Rob, she's very enamored
Yes,
by Rob,
Rob.
and she goes to the graveyard with him to sleep with him, and he says, "You know, right?" Because we already know at this point that Rob is the bug because the boys were talking about it, and she says,
Yes.
"Yeah, I know." But she doesn't know. They sleep together,
She doesn't.
and then she sees the little mouth on his neck.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You can't just say, and then she sees and then she sees that he has a tiny mouth in the nape of his
This
neck
never happened to anyone.
with teeth and everything.
There's no-
Yen, see a physician if this is you. Yikes.
Of all the deformities to get, this guy really got the short end of the stick, I think.
Why is that the short end?
You think this is the worst one? You literally saw Rick, whose entire face was morphed.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true. But this one talks. That's
Okay.
annoying.
That's annoying. Oh,
I
yeah,
mean-
annoying. Okay. You literally saw how all of these people have moved into these encampments.
Yes.
What-
Yeah. And his is just annoying.
I'm going to read a quote on how Charles Burns describes it. It was like a fish on dry land, gasping for air, making tiny, awful noises. Yikes.
It's got a word balloon. Can you
Yeah,
read
yeah,
that
okay,
word
okay.
balloon too?
Thank you.
That's what it sounded like in
Thank
my
you
head.
so much. Excellent.
And then we continue with this
Excellent.
flashback with Chris, and then she discovers she has, well, she doesn't know what she has. She doesn't know she is the bug, really. And she goes into the water. She goes, not skinny dipping, but at the kegger, they're all going to the lake, and she goes in too. But when she goes in, everyone goes silent when she gets out of her clothes, and she doesn't understand why. And when she goes in and when she gets out, we see that her spine is kind of falling apart. The skin on her spine is degrading. She is the bug. And then we've got this next chapter, which isn't really about Chris. It is not from Chris, but it's about Chris, where it's Rob having a dream in the same way that Chris had these crazy dreams. And he wakes up to find out that his partner's, his little mouth has been speaking while he's sleeping.
This is what I mean.
And was saying...
He's going to rat you out, man.
And was saying Chris's name, and his partner gets really mad and kicks him out. And then we get to...
And his partner also has the bug and has webbed fingers.
She does. And I want to get into the visuals of all of that. But I think that's it. Then we get into what Nat found, which is where Keith finds Chris in the woods. And
Keith and Chris intersect again.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Nat did his face, right? For me, I wish we had a video recording of me because I would turn the page and I wouldn't be like horrified. I'd just be like shaking my head. I'd be like, man, he can't. How did he do this? But Charles Burns, like, let's go to the beginning already. Like
Yeah.
second-
Yeah.
when Keith has that vision, I was gobsmacked.
This biology chapter, this is such a strong start out the gate of what to anticipate and see in this book that is like, holy freaking cow. Like, are you kidding me? It's so powerful. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
That concentric circle image, I was like, I could spend an hour looking at this, trying to parse this thing through.
This is where I wanted to introduce this term that I don't think you all have talked about, but you've kind of like tiptoed around in other times. Is this is something that Comix does that's unique called visual rhyming. And so this is where you're creating visual motifs and you're kind of creating this rhyme or this rhythm like you would with poetry or any other kind of writing. And so even on that page that is, if I'm counting biology with the frog on it as page 1, 2, 3, page 4, where we have Keith's eyes at the top, I was looking at a black hole. As I looked, the hole opened up and we see frog slit, foot slit, back slit, hand covering a vaginal slit, right? This kind of rhyming is set from the get-go. And
So
then we
good.
get into these concentric circles that are circles, but they're also dissected by these vertical panels. And then the spread of this page is also the exact same layout where we have Keith's eyes at the bottom,
Inverted.
Keith's eyes at the top.
Oh.
Exactly. So really thinking about the way that he's creating these rhymes, these bookends, this symmetry, and then really playing with the idea of the spontaneity of the page, of by saying he knows you're going to see this in a 2-page spread. He meaning Charles, he knows that these are things that are meant to be paired together. That is on page 4
It's
and
crazy.
5.
No, it's
The whole book is
Yeah.
like this. It's amazing.
Just to keep going on off of what Beth is saying, because it's the way Charles Burns is also treating text visually, right? Because the rhyme isn't just the images, the text boxes are inverted too, right? Nat, do you see this?
Absolutely.
The Keith, the one
You
that says
see
Keith
underneath,
and then-
no. Underneath that, those text boxes, I was looking at a whole,
right, yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's the exact same placement inverted on both pages.
Oh yeah,
Right, so it's just this full rhyme, not just of like image, but of word too. Visual rhyming is such a great term, Beth. Thank you for bringing it to the show. I keep forgetting to use it.
Yeah. I know, Yan, you know this term because you were in my classes, and this is important to me, like as a storyteller and as a cartoonist. But I think that this is such a powerful vocabulary term and such a powerful impact in a way that other works can't. And so much of this podcast, I think, and comics reading in general, is about learning and picking up on those things that now you'll see it in all different kinds of works that you read and would be able to go back and point to.
I mean, I don't know why Yan has never brought this up. This
Okay,
term
take it
visual
easy.
rhyming.
Take it easy.
I mean,
Take it
really,
easy.
Yan, do your job.
Take it
well.
easy.
Yeah, get him.
Take it easy.
And the reason I say that is because, I mean, I don't know if you know, Beth, like I am a musician, I'm a songwriter. Like
Yeah,
literally,
yeah, I do know.
I'm teaching a class next week on lyric writing. And before this recording, I was preparing my slides, and I'm doing a whole slide on rhymes, drawing a lot from like Stephen Sondheim and what he believes in like perfect rhymes.
Oh,
And
yes.
just the power and how you cannot understate how important rhymes are in lyric writing, right? Because like rhymes are emphasis to elicit an emotional response. And I think taking that and applying it to this is actually really eye-opening for me.
And one of the things I was really excited, and I'm so happy to hear you talk about that a little bit, because I come from a music background. And so to me, pacing in comics and the way that music themes and melodies get passed from one instrument to another, especially in like traditional orchestral music, or as you're seeing, especially in Sondheim is a great example of this, right? Same thing with even, I think a lot about like Les Mis, right? The way that the themes are repeated and restated and reinterpreted. That's how comics creators who are really firing on all cylinders are making their work. And you see that, see a theme show up, see a motif show up, and it gets repeated and reinterpreted and brought back in. And that visual rhyme is so necessary to how that is. And that comics and music really have this humongous relationship and like just feed off of each other in such a beautiful way. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited that that's like,
I think the word we have used in the show before is motif.
Yeah,
Sure,
right,
but
But
like
visual rhyme is just so much. It's exactly it, right?
it's a combination, but visual rhyme is also expands past motifs
Yes.
because it's also including things like how you're laying out a set of panels, how you're laying out like a chapter break. You two have talked about like the centerfold and like the significance of what that 2-page spread is. Another way that I've been taught about cartooning in general is that just like with a piece of music, you can only get to fortissimo once. You can only do it once in a piece of music. Otherwise, it starts to level out. And the same way with comics is you get to a splash page, that should be significant. That splash page is the loudest moment. And so like, how do you play with that in the different ways that you're looking at the tonality and the rhythm of your piece?
To me, what it communicates is this idea that there is a landing to stick. Right?
Hell
'Cause,
yeah.
When you land a rhyme and you land it well,
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
it punches, right? So I think it's like
Yes.
the timing of it has to
And Charles also is setting you up for visual rhyme immediately from the get-go. Even before that, is that even if we look at this opening sequence, we get a little tiny hint of a slit.
Right.
Then we turn the page, we get even more, and then the frog is paired with it. And then we see this like connection over and over again, even as we get into the second section of Planet Xeno, and you see this like bone structure repeated in this arm holding a joint structure.
I just kind of had this vision.
What? Black hole?
A black hole?
Yeah, sorry guys, I fainted. No, wait, one of you is to like me.
Oh,
Nope.
Oh man, it's everyone's
Nope.
meme.
that's the audience. The audience will like you.
No, that image,
Yeah.
that opening image of the slit, right? And then it grows. I just realized we're inside the frog.
Yeah.
That's
Ew.
horrifying. Because the slit grows because they're cutting it bigger. And then, oh, that's so nasty.
Or we're inside Chris. I mean,
I guess. I wanted to talk about, so we just talked about splash pages, right? A little bit. Beth just brought up
Yeah.
splash pages.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring up one that I was like, oh, I was super shocked by this choice, right? Because each of the chapters open with a splash page, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
But in the middle of the second one with the tentage, that's like the first non-opening page splash.
When the three boys stand
yeah,
in front
yeah,
of the
yeah,
tent.
yeah.
And I was like,
Mhm,
whoa. And I
mhm,
kind of
mhm.
felt like it was a very interesting moment because I felt this sense of like relief almost. Because I'd been so compressed with these boys, and the text was also occupying so much airspace as well. And suddenly there was this release, but also like kind of this profound loneliness with it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think so much of the way that Charles is like trying to show and highlight the forest and think about this like space, because like the boys are finding this and they're like, ew, what is this? But like this is somebody's home. And I think like to us, the reader, we are given that breath and that moment to say like, oh wow, like this is like what we're looking at without the lens of these like kind of not very good people, right? Like we get a chance to say like, wow, I need to like take a minute to like bring in all of these different elements that are happening. Yes.
You just brought up
100%.
the backgrounds, Beth. We could
Ugh.
talk for days about these backgrounds. These are
This guy.
Nat, you want to take a stab at describing these?
Why are you going to put me on the spot like this?
Because I can.
Because it's a podcast.
You want to just mute the mic for the rest of the episode?
I mean, what I will say is that it's incredibly dense, but yet at the same time, the distinction between foreground and background is still very strong. And I think that comes down to a very, very clever use of the white. Like all the faces are always white and the backgrounds are very black, right? And so even though the backgrounds, especially in this forest, are like just layers and layers of black, the characters still kind of pop and stand out, which I think is a lot easier said than done. I can imagine working in black and white. Beth, I'm sure you can speak more to that.
Yeah, it's really challenging. I think that something that I really admire about how like, and especially if we just stick with this section where we've got the splash page of the boys looking at the tent, and on the page prior to that, I guess the left-hand page prior to that, where he thinks he sees something.
Oh.
He thinks he sees someone, and there's this shot from a distance where we see in between these two trees are in the kind of the foreground, and then we see the three boys like smoking. And like we are the interloper, like the viewer has become like second person as the interloper for this, and it's so stark, and he's still able to give you the richness of the forest without drawing every single tree and without relying on this like white halo to say like, oh, don't forget, like this is a tree, it has a trunk and it has like, here are the leaves. Like there's none of the anxiety of like, what if someone can't understand this is there. There's so much confidence and in the way that he's making marks with this, and like all the way down to every single little dirt speck is drawn. Like the textures of the blacks and the way that his feathering mark gives you like this bark texture is so beautiful. And like the white plants in the foreground, and there's like a beer can that's on the ground. It really fills the space in a way that I think makes you not miss color, at least for me. Thinking about like the scratchier versions of things is a lot more of that immediacy, of that anxiety, of that like twitching hand. And this feels like very smooth. It feels very like confident and very slow and meticulous to me.
It's so precise. That panel you just brought up, Beth, it's amazing that, because like we talked when we were reading Asterios Polip about silhouettes, right?
Yeah.
Somehow Burns is making silhouettes work in a panel that's almost entirely black. How? Tell me how, Beth.
Charles!
Burns!
No, I can't. Yeah, exactly. This is very much a like, and also, sorry, sidetrack, fun fact, there are rumors that Mr. Burns from The Simpsons is named after Charles Burns.
No way. Like, yeah, The Simpsons is very much rooted in that underground comic scene.
Well, Matt and him went to school together. They're friends.
Oh, that's so funny. They
Along
were
with
friends,
Linda
and then they
Berry,
named
yeah.
him. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm going to name the worst character in this entire show after you."
Well, that's why it's like a rumor, and nobody's confirmed it, and Matt has denied it, and but Charles is like, ugh. Anyway.
I have a question on this topic of like craft and the way that Burns is doing all this. I mean, this is maybe a dumb question, Beth, but do you know
There's no
whether
dumb questions.
this was done digitally or like on paper?
It's traditional. Yeah, it's all on paper
Whoa.
with brushes.
Whoa. So
Unbelievable.
what was he using? Like
Literally like India ink on Bristol board, which is like a heavy duty, kind of like a thicker than cardstock type of feel. And
That's
it's very, very
insane.
smooth illustration board. And then using a brush by hand to paint. Like literally use a pencil to draw it all out and then to paint everything.
I mean, because my borderline Gen Z millennial mind was like, oh yeah, digital. You can just like take the black, take the bucket
You were
tool
thinking of
and
the
fill
bucket.
it-
I knew you
fill
were
it
going to
in
bring up
black.
the bucket.
and I mean,
dog.
that is how anyone in this time might do something like this, right? And it's so easy. But to do this by hand, to make the blacks that black,
Like, it's so absolute.
There is certainly some element of post-production that happens where he is, I don't know how deep in the weeds we want to go here, but
right? That's what you're here for. Get us in the weeds.
when you take it to press, there are some elements where you would be able to enhance, especially because this collection came out in 2005. So then this is able to utilize kind of like very basic Photoshop. But because when he was drawing it, and the original drawings, they are all painted in. And you can see that he has painted in every area of black in here.
Wow.
He visited my grad school as a visiting artist and did an inking demo for us. So we got to watch him do it.
Whoa.
And all of us were just like,
This particular,
not ink
Oh.
this comic, but he
Oh.
did like someone had penciled something and he inked it as like a monster, and we all sat in like complete shock and awe just watching him like do his, and he just can do that feathering like first go. And it's
Wow.
like,
That's nuts.
what the heck? Yeah, it's
Wow.
incredible. It's incredible.
A word you used in this introduction, Beth, was texture. And I think that really
Mhm.
comes down to like that inking process of how like felt and realized everything is. Like there's no surface that's left untouched. Even if something is fully
Yeah.
black, that is still something to look at, Like the amount of white space is very minimal, I find.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it almost feels like he's working in reverse. Like it almost
Exactly.
feels like he's like at drawing with white in some places. And for some of the originals, I haven't had the honor to take a look at them, but there are instances where maybe he is, I don't know, but he's working on white paper and then adding black, but it almost feels as though he's like carving into a surface like a sculptor in some ways.
No, that's the exact thing. Like when you said like what tools he was using, I was like in my head, I knew this wasn't true, but I was like, oh, he was using a blackboard and an X-Acto knife.
Yeah, like scratch board.
Like he was
Yeah.
scratching into, like
Yeah.
he was, exactly doing it in an inverted way, like black paper and carving out the white.
Now that I look at going back to the backgrounds and the textures and the feathering, especially of like trees and stuff, it reminds me a lot of like woodblock prints. I don't know if
Yes.
you're familiar.
Mhm.
It kind of feels like that.
He's deeply influenced with that style and technique. And this particular mark making for him was a new process and a new approach for how he was making art. If you looked at his work prior to this, it doesn't look like this very much. I mean, you can still, I think, pick through and see like, oh, that's Charles Burns for sure. But this particular heavy line work, heavy feathering, like woodblock-esque kind of imagery was a departure for him. And I think it's so striking. And now this is very indicative of his work and his career.
We talked a little bit about how his inking makes the backgrounds. Can we talk about the faces? Can we talk about the people?
Talk about the people.
These horrifying, pimply-faced people. And I'm talking about the
I mean,
normal
before
ones,
that-
not even the
I
bad
was
people.
I was just gonna talk about that. I was waiting to bring this up. The faces that stood out to me the most at first was that scene when the kids are looking over him when Keith
Yeah.
fainted. I don't know, why did their teeth look like that?
Yeah,
it reminds me of like Wallace and Gromit,
I mean, I think part of it is that there's also this underlighting for some reason because of the way that he's drawing. Like it feels like everyone's holding a flashlight under their chin
Yes.
and talking like, and then I was in school. Right? A lot of this book is about bringing the internal to an external, right? And so much of this is about these characters and like these deep character driven stories. Like as far as plot goes, there ultimately isn't that much. Like it's a lot of time we spend with the characters remembering things or dreaming things. And so I think some of this drawing, and especially in this one where everybody's staring at Keith, is bringing that anxiety and discomfort of like, something happened and I'm in high school and that's really embarrassing and I feel like I would rather die than be on the floor right now. And so that grotesquerie is really intended, I think, to turn that dial up, to bring the discomfort and bring the like, being a teen was horrible.
And a moment where I feel like that's really replicated, talking about visual rhyming, is when Chris goes into the water and everyone goes quiet around her.
Yes.
Right. And even though
Yes.
in that moment when Keith falls up, it's filled with text, right? It's like we get the sense it's so noisy and everybody's laughing.
Yeah.
But that moment when Chris goes into the water, everyone goes quiet. And that's almost worse. And he just nails those postures and that body language of like the girl almost covering her mouth with her hand when she's laughing, people whispering in each other's ears, these like lewd grins. Ugh.
I also think like right in that moment, like so on that right hand page, that for the one that you're talking about where you see everyone's like frozen and kind of like there's like a dude sneering and then someone's whispering and then she says, "What's wrong?" It's just like I'm wearing a bikini or something. I mean, it's only underwear, and everyone's like dead silent. She's like, "I guess it's time for me to go swimming too." Right? Like her dialogue also enhances the awkwardness. But then on that right hand page, when she's creeping towards the water and you see her thought balloons and then you see her say, "I don't need anything." And then she dives and her head gets submerged and instantly inverts the colors.
Incredible.
Is that now she is underwater and the water is black and her line work is white. And it's such a smart, like thoughtful move to like do that. And then we turn the page and we see her kind of floating through the water and feeling and thinking, and then when she surfaces we get that big reveal of like why everyone was quiet and what was going on and what they saw. But I also think like, look at how beautifully she's drawn and how like luxurious her face is, and like it reminds me of, this is also why I brought up romance comics, is like this is like classic 1940s romance comics drawing. Like, and even you see this in like Lichtenstein's versions of like, "Oh no, Keith will never love me," right? Like, and it's like she's forgotten, but you see this almost in the exact same ways and the exact same poses of this longing. And she's not longing for Keith in this instance. She's longing for like
normalcy,
inner peace, really. Yeah, normalcy, like regularity, things like that.
But little does she know, she's got the bug.
She doesn't know. How sad.
Just a quick comment while we're on this page. Sorry, just talked about texture. The texture of that water, the panel where she's standing up and you can see her back in the water. My gosh,
ripples.
I mean, now I'm just thinking he did this by hand on paper. It just blows my mind.
I'm like, oh, it only took him 10 years.
Yeah, right.
Because sorry, I just want to say more. Like, if he did this on white paper, that means that he drew the black in so that the white would become the ripples, but the white is negative space. So it's like, what?
I know.
I want to spend like a minute in like looking at the world from Charles Burns' eyes and see like he just sees everything in black and white and inverted colors. Because I just don't even know visually how you access that.
I know. It's really striking. And also in that panel, I think, and in that scene, like we get this beautiful grass texture that like it looks like you could run your hand through it. Like it looks so luscious.
I just noticed the silhouettes of the people in the background.
Yeah.
She's going back to them. Those tiny silhouettes.
Yeah, teeny tiny.
While we're on that panel, I just like think it's really interesting, and I want to know how it develops in the book because I don't have a firm sense of it yet. But how often Burns puts us in the view of the interloper, right? Like he puts us through the perspective of the person ogling. You know, we have it with Rick in the woods. We have it here, right, where we're looking at her from the back the exact same way the kids were looking at her earlier. And even, you know, from the beginning, we're inside the frog.
It's frequent because there is a major plot point that is involved with someone who has not been introduced. And we are constantly, even from the get-go, being hinted at that someone is watching.
Yes.
Someone is here. Someone is lurking. Like Keith points them out. We see the tents. And yes, we meet many of these other characters and these other kids who have left home because of having the bug. But there is something else. And you see it especially in the woods where there's these weird like sculptures tied to the trees, like on that tent page. the little baby thing, and we see this character. We meet Rick in this like second chapter here, right? Go away, go away, go away. And then we turn the page and we find out his name is Richard Holstrom. Ha ha ha, what a dweeb. And then on the right-hand page, there's a figure in the foreground. And that is not the person we just met.
Oh, that's not Rick.
Because Rick has a full head of hair.
Correct. That is not Rick. This is somebody else.
And I think that's part of what makes, like, you know, we're talking about the elements of horror here in a way that only comics can do, right? Which is that with this sense of the interloper, it freaks me out because I feel like I'm the interloper, but actually there's another interloper and they're in the room with me looking at this too.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
right behind you.
That's just like so. Yeah. Nat,
just made
don't
the face.
turn around. Nat, don't turn around. It's Rick.
No.
It's a tiny mouth going.
It's a tiny mouth.
Ew.
That is also part of what is tied to some of the discomfort of being a teenager, right? Is like you feel like you are being watched and judged constantly by your peers. And I think that there is something about this interloper. And there's also like the sensation of being the interloper as an adolescent, as a teen, being like, I don't know who I am, therefore I'm the interloper. Even when I'm with friends, like there's something mentioned later on in the book that is a comment about Keith, is that Keith always wants to be someplace else. Wherever he is, he's never satisfied with the here and now. And he's constantly thinking about and being like, oh, it would be better if I was over here. It would be better if I went and did this other thing. And so there's this continual push and pull of like not belonging. And I think being an interloper is part of that.
He's just operating on so many levels here. Burns.
Excellent. Okay. What else are we taking away from this?
I want to talk about the dream sequence.
Yes.
Which one?
Well, all of them really, but I want to talk about the first one.
Chris's one?
Chris's one, where she goes back to the dawn of man. You know that classic dream,
corkscrew-
classic recurring dream you have?
penis.
Yeah, where you go to the dawn of man and see a corkscrew penis.
Of course. I like how you interpret this as the dawn of man, which like
I
they're
didn't
not
get that.
Really,
Do you know
they're like in jean shorts and they're like holding solo cups. Like this is a kegger, but also I like that you're like this is the dawn of man because it does have like a caveman vibe.
Well, I think what's doing that for me is the way those. So we start the dream and she's at the pool and swimming hole and she sees these three guys, right? And the way they're standing for me is very evocative of like the caveman evolution. Right,
Yeah.
sitting
Yes.
lower and then upright. So that's why I keep seeing it as the dawn of man.
No, but I don't disagree. I don't disagree that that's like an intentional evocation of it.
What really just was so incredible about this dream sequence for me is the way that Burns just moves us so swiftly through it. And that's really what a dream is like, right? When you're like, oh, I'm in this one place and then I'm watching TV and then suddenly I'm in the show I'm watching. Which is exactly what happens to Chris when she unfurls the paper and she sees this snake and then she sees there's this rock behind the snake and then she's walking into the rock.
Yep. And she sees all of these figures and she's like, what are they doing? Ooh, they're eating garbage, French fries, old burgers, yuck. and then Keith is there and he's like, you don't have to.
And he has a snake body.
And he says, I brought you something good to eat.
Nat, can you describe
Like
what
what?
that is?
Yeah, what is that?
It looks like a kidney of some sort, but it has eyes.
Yeah, kind of like a big squishy jelly
With
bean.
tendrils a little
Like a
bit.
kidney bean.
Yeah.
Gross.
And then he's like, you can't. Why not? I brought it just for you.
And then he becomes he becomes a worm first, right? That's a worm.
Yeah, he starts as a worm.
Because also there's worms when she pulls the scroll out of her foot
Oh yeah.
in the background
Yeah.
image as kind of like emanata. Yeah, and then the snake shows up and then the snake patterns change for the scales so that they're different kinds, very like chimera or chameleon, I guess.
This is again why I think I kept going back to Dawn of Man because he's evolving.
Right.
He's
Yes.
becoming a more
Mhm.
complex creature.
Mhm.
Yeah. By the time he, constricts and strangles her.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and then I love on that page turn, it's like Keith is in the top of the panel and you see her feet and he's like squeezing. And then the next panel, she's upside down as if she's still dangling from the snake, but it's her blankets that are wrapped around her.
I was just gonna ask you, Beth, why does that work so well? Why? But you just explained it.
yeah,
She's dangling.
magic. Comics, magic.
The one more thing I want to bring up about this dream sequence which is the whole reason I picked warbling, which is the borders of the panels. Whenever it's a dream or a flashback, when it's not in present time, are these little wavy things, which, like a little bit like a snake.
Yeah.
And that works on that other page that you were both just talking about, right? Where half the image is in the warbly, and then we have the harsh straight lines, right? And it's really this sensation of jumping out of a dream, like the sharp feeling of reality.
Yeah, I love when cartoonists do that, or they're creating like their visual language or their lexicon to try to tell you what rules they're setting up for their storytelling. And like the wavy, warbly lines is like a classic comics thing to be like, this is a dream, this is, not reality. But I think that the way he does it is still this like really precise, and it still has kind of like a pointiness to the corners. So it doesn't fully feel like a balloon shape or like kind of like that rounded cloud shape. It's very unique, and it feels a little more like the Wayne's World, like doodle-doo, doodle-doo, doodle-doo kind of moment to me, but less silly.
Yeah. I mean, actually, the warbliness aside, am I correct to say that Burns' paneling is quite conventional in terms of, it's really doesn't really break out of the panels. There's nothing that sort of sits in the gutters per se.
Yeah, I don't know if he actually breaks the panel at all in this whole book. I don't think so.
I would say that like that first image we were talking about with the concentric circles.
Right. Yeah,
that is a very unconventional paneling layout.
Well, I mean, I think it just depends on how you're defining conventional versus unconventional, because to me, he's still using a grid. He's using a sense of logic. He's using rectangles.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's like, it's not skull-shaped or something totally bonkers.
It's not Daredevil wake up.
Correct. And I think also, so it's traditional in that sense, but the ways in which he's playing with his own rules and the way that is, because there's some dream sequences, like the flashback is a good example of this, is that this is still kind of rectilinear as it moves through. But later on in the book, there are dream sequences where he is no longer playing with the grid, and it's kind of like diagonals, it's like cut through, but they're still very much contained in their own panel shapes. So there's things like that he's doing that I think, and then I'm not going to show you the subsequent pages, but they get even more bananas. But there are instances like that where it will diverge and then like return to kind of like regularity or normalcy, which also I think is very important to horror as a genre, is the idea of moving from order to chaos. And then in horror, predominantly, you don't return from the chaos back to order. You stay in chaos.
I want to ask you, Beth, as a person who has just put out do you consider Tender horror?
I do, yes.
Do you think Burns's work has anything to do with what you were doing in Tender, or were there choices you were making that were similar?
Yeah, I love Charles Burns, in case you can't tell from the way that I react about
Beth,
reading it and talking about it.
We're so happy to say we got a surprise guest on the show.
Come
Bring
on
him
out,
in,
Mr.
Roshan.
Burns. Montgomery Burns, not Charles.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, like, to me, I really resonate, and maybe this is just from like the way that I think about paneling, the way that I think about cartooning and pacing. Like, so much is about setting up a system of rules or a system of guidelines, and then being able to play and expand within that. And I think that Charles Burns is somebody I look to and I'm like, wow, I want to be you when I grow up. And I think that also, like, his story, similar to my book, it's most easily defined as like, this is horror. However, it is so much more than that. It is not a slasher. It is not gross for the sake of gross. Like, it is trying to talk to you about something in a way that, again, brings that internal to the external. And horror is one of the easiest genres in order to demonstrate that through a visual medium.
Which is exactly what Tender does, I think. Makes the internal external and also horrifying.
Yes. You keep like driving us to Tender and I'm like, yeah, but black hole.
And I'm like, no, but Tender.
I think a lot of that it has to do with, in many people, the things that are bubbling under the surface are what's more interesting. And in order to get to that, you have to kind of cut it open.
Oh. What a wonderful metaphor, Beth. Oh gosh. Down
Similar
from
to
the
a frog.
steel ladder. The people's champion. This is totally tangential, Beth. What's he like as a person?
I mean, we're not like
I
friends.
know,
Like,
but
I
you
don't
saw
know,
him speak.
I don't know him well enough to be
I know. But like, what's
Yeah.
his persona? Like his public persona like?
He's just a guy. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Just a
Like,
regular dude.
he's not.
Okay,
He
okay.
doesn't like walk around and like. He doesn't have a tiny mouth that's like making fish noises. If that's what you're wondering.
That was
like,
exactly
not
what I was
one-
asking.
He doesn't have one that he shared with my class and me. Like, I mean, he takes his craft seriously.
Mhm.
I think that he's funny. He's like relatively personable, but also I feel like it's tough because like I'm incredibly intimidated and nervous because I think he's a celebrity. So like my read of him is like, oh my God, he's amazing. Yeah, I'm too subjective about how I feel about his work to be able. He did not blip my radar as like, wow, what a guy. Like I don't feel that way about it, but I also am like, he's just a guy. He's just a cartoonist.
I just
Yeah,
Googled
yeah.
him just to get a visual, and like the first image that comes up is like a self-portrait, I assume, of him in this style, the black and white style, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
Yeah, he has one at the back of the book too, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, is it the on
Oh,
the,
yeah, it's that one.
the French flap? Yeah. Yeah, so he looks kind of like that.
Wait, who's the guy in the interior of the front?
I think that's him as a teenager, or that's a character we don't know yet.
Oh, it must be. Yeah, that's him as a teenager.
Oh, yeah, it's the same face, just of hair.
Oh, I just realized the cover's a yearbook photo.
Yeah, and so then the front end papers, which is what you call the interior of the front cover, the end papers are like regular yearbook photo, and then when you go to the back one, it's like them as their mutant forms.
Oh.
What a beautiful
Wow,
harmonizing
comic books are so good.
realization.
Comics
That's
are
so cool. It's just
good.
like that was totally unnecessary, but it's so cool.
Not unnecessary.
Nat, watch
Every
yourself, Nat.
aspect.
Sorry.
Just a second. Hold on. I feel like I want to like throw a timeout card for a minute. Like here. I'm sorry. Why did you say it was unnecessary?
No. Is it like he didn't have to
Auxiliary,
do that?
I think is what Nat
yeah,
means more.
auxiliary. Like he didn't have to do that, but he did, and it's so cool that he did.
I still don't follow. What do you mean? Why is this auxiliary?
I'm stressed.
How is this?
I'm
How
stressed.
does you? Okay. Time. Sorry. I'm trying really hard not to come in with the people's elbow. Like, but I feel like I want to get really close to this camera and
you
be
are.
like, Nat. Nat. Every aspect of a publication is an opportunity to be able to express that design choice. Like a Serious Polyp of all things should have taught you this.
Yes.
Did you even take the wraparound cover off?
I apologize. I'm so sorry. I was wrong.
No, we didn't take the wraparound cover off because we have a library copy. It's laminated and glued.
Oh my goodness gracious.
What's under the cover of a Serious Polyp?
First of all, I know this is a podcast not about a Serious Polyp, but okay, right? We've seen this.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So, did you even look at the end papers of this book? No, look at your faces. Are you kidding me?
Oh
here?
man. This is
Yeah,
this is a tag team
you're on my
matchup
shit
versus
list
one
right now.
person, and we're losing.
Here's one end paper.
I can't see that
Okay,
clearly.
wait.
Is it
Okay, so
flowers?
it's like flowers and grains.
It's flowers.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And it's pink.
Oh
And
wait.
here is-
Is it gonna be blue? It's blue! By God, she's done it! The RKO!
But there's a
But can you see? It's really hard to see the emboss of
Oh.
Asterios on the gray. Do you see his
This
figure
is so sad.
right here?
Okay.
Oh, okay, wait, I see.
Whoa, yeah.
So then on the back, again, it's really tough to see, but this is him after he's changed with his eye missing.
Oh.
So there's a before and after, and these are called end tapes.
My God.
Wait, as in it's pink and blue?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Literally every single design choice possible is being utilized in this book to show you the themes of the work in
And-
the same way
Wow.
as Black Hole.
Totally necessary.
And also, who's the publisher?
Is it Pantheon?
Is that also a Pantheon? Oh.
Yeah. So for the listener, what Beth just showed us was the Beth. I'm gonna get all the terms wrong. I already forgot them.
The end papers, which are the interior of the covers, are on the front is a blue with flowers with purple line work, and then the back is the magenta with flowers and purple line work.
Representing Asterios and
And
Hana.
Hana.
And then the end tapes, which are these tiny little pieces that hold the top and bottom of the book together that are purely decorative. They're They're not at this point functional anymore in the way that we do books. But those are also blue and pink to represent the two. And then embossed, so carved into the raw board of the cover on the front is Asterios when he begins the book. And on the back is Asterios when he ends the book, signifying his journey through the story.
Which goes back to that goes back to that image we talked about with the coin flip, right? Where it's the circle of Asterios as a young professor and then Asterios watching his house burn down.
And I also think possibly in that one, you didn't talk about the actual design of Asterios. I mean, you did a little bit, but his head, let's see if you can see. So first of all, humble brag.
A signed copy.
Whoa.
But look at his head. You can see the pencil mark from the circle template that he uses to draw Asterios' head. And then he carves out pieces missing from the circle.
Right.
Because Asterios is not a complete person. Sorry, I was leaning so that I could show that.
Wow.
How did you not tell me this?
Well, I didn't.
I don't know.
Okay. Everyone take it easy.
So to go back to the book that we're actually reading here. So the way in which design is being utilized in this book and thinking about how the whole book structure, not only the different pages and the chapter breaks and the way that each volume when it was originally put together is, but also looking at that beginning and end, that the continuity of the book object is also significant because Charles is thinking about all these different layers of storytelling and that it's not just the publisher making these design choices, it's in tandem with the creator.
That's so cool. And I think that's what's really cool about that too, is that it's like an escalation from the floppies. These end papers are not an option with the floppies.
Correct. And in fact, there are bonus covers that the floppies get to have and character profiles that we don't get to see in the collected version. Wow. And I think that that's also incredibly special that, you know, a lot of this podcast is about what do comics bring that other mediums can't. And I think that book design and the way that book design can function with a comic that already utilizes visuals and visual storytelling is something that like the whole design of the book is important to consider.
And it's even like within this, we're talking about like what can the media of a floppy do that a trade can't, and vice versa. So we're like, really, we are, Beth, you promised you'd take us to the weeds, and we are in the weeds.
Call me schooled.
We're coming up to the end of this show. Do you know what the questions we ask are?
Okay, one of the questions is, so, Yan, Nat, are you going to finish reading Black Hole by Charles Burns?
Absolutely, I'm going to finish reading Black Hole. I'm just not going to do it before going to bed. I'm so glad that I resisted the temptation to open it before going to sleep because I'd have had that exact same dream, corkscrew penises, dawn of man, little mouth on my neck.
And I would be a snake.
You haven't even met Eliza yet.
I'm so scared. But I'm really looking forward to reading
Eliza and Peggy.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right,
sorry.
And Peggy. And Nat, are you going to finish it?
Yeah. I mean, I actually have it now. It's not a library copy that I get from Yen, you know, and then it's with me. So I'm pretty sure I will finish reading it. Like, in what time period I'll finish reading it? It could be, you know, by the end of this year, I think, maybe.
A millennia. Right. It took him 10 years to make it. So my hope is that it will take you less than 10 years to read.
I'm still reading this one summer, might I add. It's by my bedside. I read a few pages like every day.
Really parsing it out.
I love that
little
book.
Nighttime treats.
I love that book.
Yeah.
And also, because this book was shrink wrapped for your safety, now you can't return it.
True.
Well, that's great. I don't know if I remember the other question.
The other question is difficult,
totally
so Nat's going to set it up.
Because it's totally not a question. It's what we call, we have a little jingle for it. It goes, pipeline, pipeline, come on everyone, it's pipeline time.
Oh, that was the same. You actually did it the same tune this time.
Yeah, I remember it.
Oh.
I'm a songwriter, Yen.
And that's what you got?
Yeah. So basically, it's the Comic Sans pipeline where Black Hole sits in the middle of this equation. And we're going to start by saying, you know, to someone who hasn't read Black Hole, what might be a piece of media or anything really in the world that, you know, if they liked that thing, they would like Black Hole.
Yeah. Perfect. Got it. I think if you like Cronenberg movies,
that's such a good pick. Oh.
The Fly, The Brood, I haven't seen the new
Crimes
one,
of the Future.
Crimes of the Future, then you would like Black Hole because it is visceral and ominous.
That's a great pick. Nat, do you have something?
Well, I have something, but it's not something that I've consumed or seen. But so you guys tell me if this is correct, okay? I just think
whatever.
that
You're recommending something you don't know.
Yeah, this is
no,
go
this is
ahead,
not
Nat.
this is not a recommendation. It's just I think if you like that, you might like this, and tell me if I'm
But
right.
it's really a if you think if you have no idea.
So
Tell us what it is, Nat.
My conjecture is, I think if people who like Riverdale might like this, because doesn't
Yes.
Riverdale have like also about teenagers and like this murder and there's like
Yeah.
sex and things like that, you know?
But
And
for me, it's like that meme of like who would win in a fight, coughing baby or a nuclear bomb. And this is the nuclear bomb. Riverdale is a coughing baby.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Riverdale is very neutered, I would say, and
Right.
is a little bit more campy than this is. But I don't think that that's far off, because I think, again, like we didn't really talk much about the romance aspect of this, or like the teenage kind of component of it. But I think that's a great rec, because I think yes,
I was trying to bring
yes,
it full circle because we talked about
Back to
Archie at
Archie.
the start, you know?
Yeah.
exactly,
Good job, Nat. Good job.
exactly.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go the other way with it, and I'm talking about the art, right? If you like Berserk by Kentaro Miura, the wonderful, wonderful manga that is also very upsetting and very dark, I think when I was reading this, I had really thought of the style Kentaro Miura uses in Berserk. Right, very heavy
Nice.
blacks, very detailed, very oriented. Also took him so long to make, to the point that he's actually, rest in peace, he's passed away before he finished it because he took so long to make it. And I think that those are two interesting comparisons because they use similar artistic styles, but their relationships with horror are quite different. Where Berserk is very much about overwhelming you with these awful images, and where Charles Burns is really like meeting them out to you, like rationing them out in a way that's just going to spike your adrenaline, and then you're going to go down. Whereas Berserk is the whole time you're reading it, you're like, that's my start of the pipeline.
That's great.
Well, in typical Yen fashion, he kind of, because the first part of the pipeline is meant to be a non-comic thing, but he went ahead and gave a
I
comic.
can do whatever I want. I want.
Okay, fine. Well, and then the second half of the pipeline now is, imagine like the hypothetical listener, Beth. They're like, hey, I like Riverdale. I'm gonna read Black Hole. They go read it. They've read Black Hole. They like it. What's next? What's the next comic they go to after Black Hole? Ignoring Berserk, like Yen just said.
So I have to do two because
sure.
I'm the guest.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
you get special
because
privileges.
Yen said he can do whatever he wants.
And you can really do whatever you want.
So the first one is, I think you should read, if you liked Black Hole, you should read Uzumaki by Junji Ito.
Oh, great rec.
Because of we talked about spiral penises, and I think that Uzumaki is about spirals.
but not the
and
penis, just the spirals.
No, there's penises.
Oh, great.
But not, Nat.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks.
they're more like snail penises, though. So, yeah. Anyway, you should read Uzumaki. If this is the bomb, then Uzumaki is some other bigger disaster. It's a meteor hitting the earth.
Wow. Okay.
It's more intense than Black Hole, if you ask me. And then the second thing would be for like a medium intense, but not so extreme, would actually be another Fantagraphics title and colleague of mine. You should read Ultrasound by Connor Stick-Schulte, which is a Fantagraphics title and is more of a thriller than it is a horror.
Those are great recs. The producers of the show and I have constantly like wavered on whether we're gonna make Nat read Uzumaki. we're like, can we do that? Is that legal? Will he make it through?
Oh,
is that attempted homicide?
Meteor crashing to Earth. I don't want it.
There are chapters where you will be totally fine, and there are chapters where you will never resurface.
Well, okay.
So I think if curated appropriately, one could do Uzumaki.
We'll think about it, Nat. We'll think about it.
There's also a film, which I know will be even more problem for you.
Oh yeah, because there's sound, Nat.
Because there's
there's
sound.
sound. No, I'm out of here, man. I'm out of here.
Everyone ready for the end of the pipeline?
Oh, did you get one too? I thought it was just Beth.
I don't get one? Come on, give me one.
Oh, no, I'll give you one. I'll give you one.
Well, you gotta give me one when you see what it is. It's Tender. Wait.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
Tender
Oh my
by
goodness.
Beth Hetland.
How could we
Yes,
forget?
fantastic.
How could we forget?
Wow.
Wait, mine's
Wow,
also
wow.
signed, but I can't get to the signature.
Wait, you gotta sign mine too,
Sign in
Beth?
blood. Yes, fly me to Singapore. I'll be
okay.
there.
That really was a struggle. I don't know
This
how
was-
you
that
did
was
so
bad.
That was
easily,
I
Beth.
didn't-
really
Yeah, I
challenging.
didn't see anything. What were you doing with your hand?
Thank
No, but truly, if you like Black Hole, or even if you have not read Black Hole, please go read Tender by Beth Hetland. It's so good. And if you do get a copy, let us know. We would love to see your thoughts on Tender. Let us know that we contributed to sales a little bit.
Yeah.
Yen, what's it about?
Tender is about this woman contending with her own expectations of what her life will look like and societal expectations of what her life should be, and the ways that those pressures affect her and change her and the people around her.
But it's horror.
But it's horror. I'm trying to reveal as little as possible because I think the book
Yeah.
is really, Beth does such a great job of pacing that out, like the same way that Burns does, of like meeting it out to you and giving you these little spikes of, oh, something's wrong here. So if I try to deliver it to you, that's just not the way you should receive it. You should receive it through the book. Get the book, everybody.
My like little pitch of it is a woman so hungry for a picture perfect life, she'll do whatever it takes to get it.
That's so much better than what I had, but also it's Beth's book. So
Yeah.
I've been talking about it for 2 months. And many more to come.
Well, thanks so much for stopping by Comic Sans, Beth.
Holy cow. Truly, the pleasure is mine. Thank you for letting me bully you into reading a book that I love dearly, that I think is so incredible, and that you just let me chat your ears off about.
I had such a terrific time learning from you, reading this book. Nat?
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for being our inaugural guest. And, you chatted our ears off at my ears. We're very happy to be chatted off, and they were blessed by your wisdom and the weeds.
I'll just say the bar is high now for guests.
Yeah,
but
I know,
also
for any future
for me,
guests.
when we come back to season 3, I gotta step up.
Oh,
I
it's
gotta-
okay. Everyone knows the bar you've set for yourself, Yan, so it's fine.
I'll just say this. If you decide to do Uzumaki, I sincerely hope you will consider reinviting me.
Oh, Beth,
Oh.
100%, Beth. Beth, 100%.
Here's a little taste for you, Nat.
Is that
Now
actually from the
imagine-
comic, or is it just a coincidental snail?
Nope, that's from the comic.
Oh.
This is my curse
Oh.
to you. No, this has been such a treat. Thank you so much. I love the way that you guys talk about comics, and I think that it's really exciting and really accessible. And I think that that's one of the most important things, is that being able to talk about comics in this way that people can join and take a look at and understand, and then kind of get a little glimpse of how they're made and what makes them special. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, listener, for listening. And we'll see you on the next page.
Beth, say this with me. 1, 2, 3. See ya!
Terrible mind meld. Terrible mind meld.
Thanks for listening to Comic Sans. This is an Andas Productions podcast hosted by Mal Yente and Nathaniel Ma and produced by Scott Lee Chua and Roshan Singh Sambi. This episode was audio edited by Maddie Searle, video edited by Kit Ling Leong, and transcribed by Danielle Ann Espinosa. Our cover art is by Isabel Fang, and our motion graphic animations by Kanikni Studio Mariana Rudakova. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review Comic Sans. And while you're at it, follow us on social media at Comic Sans Pod. Links are in the description below.